Hi, friends. It's no secret that I have a terminal case of born in the wrong era-ism when it comes to miniatures. I know, very cringe. But I just really love the heroic scale miniatures of old, especially around the 2000s-ish. Although the new models are all technically heroic scale still, they're definitely moving towards more of a realistic aesthetic. And while there's obviously nothing wrong with liking one style over another, I think it's just flat out wrong to think that the new style of minis are a direct upgrade of the old miniatures. Sure, new miniatures are generally more detailed and better on a technical level due to the precision of newer technology. However, I strongly believe that the older style miniatures, they have merit and they're equally as good, if not better from an artistic standpoint. So today, I just want to do an internet-friendly top 5 list of reasons that the heroic scale miniatures have their merit, why I like them, and why they aren't just relics born of shoddy tools and lack of resources. And of course, it should go without saying, but like any discussion about art, this video will be highly subjective and my arguments are somewhat general. There are old minis that I strongly dislike, and there's new minis that I really love. So these points, of course, won't apply to every single model ever. But without further ado, let's go into the first reason. Reason number one, realism doesn't matter. Let's just start off bold and brash. Realism, it simply doesn't matter. At least not to the extent that people seem to think it does, and especially not in art. There are an alarming amount of people that seem to think the only measure of an artwork's merit is how true to life it is, and honestly, this is just a blatant misunderstanding of art. One of the coolest aspects of art is that the artist has full freedom to bend reality in order to create a piece that fulfills the intended feel and message behind it. And this can manifest in something like more dramatic lighting, all the way to extreme abstraction in order to evoke an intended effect. And artists throughout history know that stylization is often more important than just making a perfectly realistic piece. Even photographers who capture reality tend to edit their photos, sacrificing some realism for a more striking image. At risk of sounding like a pretentious dickhead comparing Rembrandts to 40K minis, this principle applies to model design. I'm a strong believer that if something looks cool or would look better, it doesn't matter if it's 100% realistic or physically possible. Pfft, nerd shit, am I right? But, I really don't like the argument that old models are inferior just because they don't look realistic. I find the stylization in ways that the sculptors decided to emphasize certain aspects of the model to be just as impressive as how modern sculptors are able to make models with extremely clean, accurate details. Take a look at the jackals. They're super ripped roidos. These sculpts of dudes' muscles are absolutely amazingly realistic for such a small sculpture. Super realistic musculature and proportion. But now take a look at the old Catachan. Ew, gross. Well, these guys are also super ripped roidos. Perhaps not lore-wise, but they're based on Arnie and Stallone. They're roid maxing for real. And this may be controversial, but I think they sell that idea a lot better than the new Jackals. Just look at these two models and tell me which one looks stronger. To me, it's definitely the Cadia. The Cadia biceps are like the size of their heads, and it's wild, it's over the top, and honestly, it's just really awesome looking. And yeah, the muscle sculpts of the Cadian are a lot less technically impressive and a lot less detailed than the Jackals, and the proportions are wildly unrealistic. But they just sell the idea so much better to me. You look at this dude and you instantly think, oh yeah, he's strong. And I feel this stylization is especially important for tabletop minis, which leads into my next point. Reason 2. Exaggeration is important. This point is mostly just to bolster the last point, as exaggeration is often a big part of different styles. But I'll go into a bit more specifics. Like I said, I find the heroic scale stylization of exaggerating features like the hands, heads, and weapons to not only look really cool, but it's also functionally practical for tabletop miniatures. These features are the most important things for the viewers to see, and they can often tell a story. Faces convey the most character and emotion, the hands often indicate the actions being done and add to the personality, and finally, the weapon shows the unit's battlefield role, its power, and it obviously makes the figure look more threatening on account of, well, the giant gun in its hand. But going back into pretentious art mode, once again, the great artists throughout history were no strangers to exaggeration and morphing details to fit their intentions. One of the greatest, if not the greatest sculptures ever, Michelangelo's David, has exaggerated features. His hands and head are bigger than what would be realistic, and, well, one feature is a bit smaller than what might be considered realistic, but that one's irrelevant to this point. Sorry, little guy. Some people say you're actually quite average. It's fine. But I digress. The point is, the world's most popular sculpture is literally heroic scale. And this scale discrepancy was most certainly not by accident. Michelangelo studied anatomy extensively, doing dissections and innovating the art world with his research. And in many areas, David has insane details and extraordinary realism. But Michelangelo knew the importance of exaggeration. The sculpture was intended to be displayed on a rooftop, so making the focal points larger to draw emphasis was really important. Similarly, Warhammer models will be viewed from a relatively far distance above, so it makes sense that similar features would be exaggerated. And unfortunately, Michelangelo didn't sculpt David to be strapped with a heavy bolter or any gun for that matter. Yeah, masterpiece my ass. But I do want to touch on the exaggerated size of 40k weapons. I think that this is perhaps the most important and cool feature to be exaggerated for 40k minis. Obviously, guns are cool, so big gun, big cool, blah blah. Yeah, I'm American, but just take a look at some of these historical minis. Yeah, it's realistic, and for a historical mini, that's probably more important than just straight looking cool. But man, I feel these guns look lame as hell. On tabletop, these look like sewing noodles and they're just super wimpy. Take that in contrast to the good old guard. Yeah, these are the new Cadians, and they experience major shrinkage, just like David, but their weapons are still a lot beefier, and to me, that looks a lot cooler at this scale. Then go to the previous generation of Cadians, and boy, these are beefy. That's what I like to see. Even the smallest, wimpiest 40k weapon is a big, unwieldy death machine. It's rugged, it's cool, it's threatening, and baby, that's 40k to me. And it might just be me, but when I look down on the table, I don't want to see a bunch of stick men shooting little toothpick guns. I want to see some crazy ass, over the top 40k nonsense men just steaming each other's hams. And that's just the last guns. Continuing with the guard, check out the difference in Kazarkin weapons. I like the new Kazarkin, don't get me wrong. But look at the difference in the heavier special weapons. The old Plasma and Melta, they look properly heavy and destructive. There's a ton of heavy cabling, the guns themselves have extra heft, and the Kazarkin, they need to hold a solid stance to fire these beasts. These dudes really look like the Devastators of the Guard. Whereas the new Kazarkin special weapons, they look like just slightly bigger rifles to me. And this fits the fast assault aesthetic better, but to me, it doesn't really feel as cool as having a near person sized cannon just lasering people down the battlefield. And again, this isn't 100% consistent. The older guard plasma guns, for example, were incredibly sleek, and I don't think they really fit the aesthetic well. And the new kits, they have some cool, huge ass weapons from time to time. But I can't help but feel that some of the classic 40k over the topness is lost with a lot of the new models. And I feel this decrease in exaggeration and stylization is a big reason a lot of people say that the old models had a lot more character to them, even if they can't pinpoint exactly why they feel that way. So, reason three, the beauty of simplicity. Speaking of character, I feel like another thing that helped make old models have such a unique character and iconic feel was their relative simplicity. New models are beautifully detailed, they have a bunch of little pouches, lines, and other stuff, but to be honest, I think that a lot of these new models are kind of over designed, and this kind of muddies the model and worsens the overall look. The older models were definitely more simple, but I think that simplicity helped make for some really iconic and recognizable designs. The details they did have were often very bold and often more purposeful. You can't spell bold without old after all, so checkmate new model lovers. I made a rhyme, so now I'm objectively correct. But once again, back to the guard. The new ones, they have a ton of straps and little trinkets, which that is pretty cool, I won't lie, but I feel it kind of makes them look like generic military dudes. Well, more generic than they already were. And I can be completely off on this, and feel free to call me a dum dum poo poo head, but I really do think that simple designs lend themselves to becoming more iconic. It's often said that characters that everyone can easily draw and visualize often become more iconic than more complicated designs. And even more complex, iconic characters usually have really strong, simple silhouettes. And I think this is a huge reason why the Space Marines became so iconic. At their base, they're just a big, chunky dude. But their silhouettes with the giant pauldrons, flared greaves, and of course their super iconic helmet that has stood the test of time and will always be a Space Marine staple. Oh, they replaced that with the Mark IV style, not even beakies? And there's only like two in recent kits? Oh, well, those first two things and the power pack, sure. Those are instantly recognizable to anyone with at least an ounce of nerd in their blood. Also, Mark 7 will always be iconic to me, even if they never get a kit ever, ever, ever again. Like a true guardsman, there are a lot of stupid hills that I would die on. Just like think about those images or models of Space Marines redesigned to be more intricate or futuristic. I'm not trying to discredit the artists at all, as they're undeniably skilled and their works look really cool. However, in my mind, the complicated designs and details tend to make a lot of them kind of just blend in with that generic sci fi style you're probably thinking of. To further my point, let's look at another one of my favorite franchises, Transformers. The Michael Bay Transformers are legitimate wonders of technology and are extremely impressively made. The millions of moving parts and little details are all incredible. But most fans tend to prefer the simple, bold designs of G1. And maybe this is just nostalgia, but I really do think that the simplicity is what makes Transformers so iconic and recognizable. A common complaint with the Bayverse movies is that all the Transformers look the same, especially the Decepticons. And I think this is because they're just so over designed that your brain just sees a mess of metal. And paradoxically, the old designs that are basically all the same basic formation of blocks are way more recognizable. And later on in the live action films, the Bumblebee character designs, they're much simpler and it's much easier to tell who's who. And to me, the designs look so much cooler this way. And the way I feel about the G1 Transformers designs are kind of similar to the way I feel about older Warhammer figures. I feel like the simple, bold designs, they look cool and it helps make them really recognizable and iconic. Reason 4. Reality can be boring sometimes. There's a reason that fiction is so popular. Sometimes we just want to escape reality to a more fantastical world for a bit. And I believe that this applies on an aesthetic level as well. And it's just simply boring to me when reality hinders a fantasy setting too much. I think that a level of realism is important to ground the world and keep it from just becoming a playground battle of, oh, my character's invincible. Oh, well, my character's invincible times 4 Googleplex. And I think that a place where reality hindering coolness is apparent is in the posing. I don't know if I'm the only one, but a lot of the poses of the newer models look kind of weird to me. And I think the reason for this is because the GW designers are trying to make more realistic poses with the armor and the physics in mind. Please comment and let me know if you think I'm off on this point, as I think it's one of the more shaky ones in this video, but here's a few examples of what I mean. The old poses are exaggerated, silly, and they look a bit like an unrealistic movie pose or something, but I really like the charm of that and I think it looks cool and fun. In comparison to the older ones, the more contemporary poses, they look a bit stiffer in places and a bit awkward in others to me. I like the new Terminators, and this is a bit subtle, but the old Terminators definitely do look more emotion with their poses, even if it doesn't really make sense for them to be as dynamic due to their heavy armor. But I can see why people might prefer the more hulking look, a space hulking look, if you will. Or the Kazarkin here. Yeah, it wouldn't be a Crackdick video if I didn't keep talking about Kazarkin, but look at this stiff, awkward looking sergeant. Look at this stupid drunk guy. And look at all the other relatively boring standing poses. The old Kazarkin were also just standing, but they were a bit more exaggerated and expressive in my eyes. Specifically, take that drunk guy. I think they were going for a more subtle remake of this pose. They're both kind of hunkering down and charging forward, but let's be honest, this metal dude is hamming it up a bit. It's probably more dramatic of a run than a real dude would do, but I think it makes the pose work way better. And very similar to that, here's the final example. I think that this pose is a callback to this metal lieutenant. But look, this metal lieutenant is a lot more squatted down, he's a lot more dramatic, he's leaning forward, and I think that makes the pose look a lot cooler. Again, it's down to each person's preference, but this video is why I like the old style. And a big reason why I like the old style are these more dramatic poses. I think they look cooler, I think they look more heroic, and I think they look more threatening, all of which are really fitting for the 40K setting. And of course, I'm just picking and choosing some examples. Not everything is all peachy keen for the old stuff, and a lot of old models look terribly stiff or awkward, and a lot of new models look really dynamic and cool. But finally, here's my last reason. Reason 5. I just like it. And this is the most important reason. I like the old style because I like the old style. I think it looks cool. I like the bold designs. I like the cartoon silliness. And I like the grungier, messier design choices. I could go on and on about why I like something, and many people will still choose to like what they like, and that's totally fine. It's just preference and also my objectively correct opinion at the end of the day. So, I guess the whole point of this video is that there is no point, and that's just like my opinion, bro. But Jonklin aside, I really do hope this video could shed some light on why I love the old style so much and why I so strongly, super duper disagree with the idea that the new models are just direct upgrades of the old. To me, it's a lot like how people discount animations or cartoons as silly crap for children and they can only take something as quote unquote real cinema if it's live action. Killing style just to make something realistic for the sake of it is so boring and dumb to me. Disney. And these stylized works, they could be just as serious, profound, or I don't know, good. Good as an ultra realistic piece. And no one medium is better, and they both have their strengths and weaknesses that can be used to further a creator's vision. And this video isn't a debate or an argument. I just want to try and defend the merit of the older style that's far too many discount as an unfortunate relic of the past. But that's enough incoherent yapping for me. Let me know what era 40K models you like the most. What's your favorite old model? What's your favorite new model? And comment below if you agree with my silly little defenses of the heroic scale. Or comment if you think I'm just a dumb idiot who's nostalgic for a time I wasn't even alive for. And this video was a bit experimental, being more of a researched opinion piece than really anything else I have. So please let me know if you liked it and would want more down the line. If you did, comment, I really like this video style. And if you didn't, comment, I really like this video, but stick to the lore, Stickman. That way I'll know who's my most loyal followers and who is cool enough to join me on my holy crusade to resurrect the heroic scale. But yeah, thanks for watching, and thank you to the patrons who support the channel a bit extra. They're literally buying me some more time to put out consistent videos and improve my work. So big thanks to them. But as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your favorite weird, silly, disproportionate models. Thanks. Also, when I talk about scale and proportions, I'm talking about body proportions, not height. Something I love about the new models is that most of the heights are mostly consistent and look great next to each other. Also, I hate the new Coatsias. Screw that golden loser guy. He looks like garbage. Ugh.